All right. Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter, verses 17 through 19. Do you all stand for the reading of the word here? Amen. I'll make sure I get it right. Amen. My mama taught me how to act when I go to folk house, right? Amen. I know how to treat a bishop. Amen. Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter, verses 17 through 19 from the New Revised Standard Version. Though the fig tree does not blossom, and no fruit is on the vines, though the produce of the olives fails, and the fields yield no food, though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there is no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will exult in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He makes me tread upon heights. Though the fig tree does not blossom and no fruit is on the vines, though the produce of the olive fails and the fields yield no food, though the flock is cut off from the fold, and there is no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Amen. We'll use as a subject for today an unexpected harvest. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. An unexpected harvest. I grew up in the church. And I grew up in the church, and growing up in the church, I loved the drama, the excitement, the fervor of the church. I loved the song singing. I loved the music. I loved even the preaching before I knew what the world anybody was singing about, playing about, or talking about. And I remember as a young child, when I started taking piano lessons, there was a song that my pastor would sing. I'm not going to sing it. I can't sing. I know some of y'all know that's somehow the preacher, they set it up, right? Everybody get ready. God gave many talents, and that one wasn't mine. Amen? But my childhood pastor, my favorite pastor, used to sing an old Douglas Miller song that said, though the storms keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the nights from day, still the hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eye upon the distant shore. I know he'll lead me safely to a blessed place he has prepared. But if the storms don't cease, and if the wind keeps blowing in my life, what my soul has been anchored in the Lord. And I love when my pastor would sing it, because when he sang it, he felt it in his very tippy toes, and he threw his head back, and when he said, my soul, you could see it anchored in the Lord, and the folk would just fall out and roll under the pews, and I had no idea what was going on, but I loved it because my soul felt it before my intellect could process it. Before I understood what it meant, God planted that seed in my life. And so when we look at the text, we see a man by the name of Habakkuk who is preaching about a devastation. Anybody ever been devastated? Understand that the land of Judah, that if there were no fruit on the vines, they would be devastated. Understand that if there were no sheep in the stalls, they would be devastated. But in the middle of devastation, Habakkuk said, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Anybody in the church ever been devastated before? I'm talking about devastated. I'm not talking about little tears. I'm talking about on the floor, in the bathroom, crying out to God. Don't know if you can get out. I'm talking about devastated. I'm talking about grief that you never thought you would smile again. Devastated. Anybody ever been broke? I don't mean you don't have money for lunch. I mean broke. I mean more bills than you got income coming in. Anybody ever been devastated? Anybody ever had their heart broken? I'm not talking about he checked no on the box. Do you like me? Yes or no? I'm talking about you done used your credit card. You done went to see this fool. You done gave your heart, your body, your mind, and they left you. Have you ever been devastated? Have you ever felt what it's like to crave, to want, to desire peace, calm, and contentment, but all you found was devastation? Have you ever known what it's like to crave nothing but a good night's rest, but all you found was devastation? Have you ever tried to talk yourself out of the devastation only to find even more devastation? Have you ever called up folk that you thought would make you feel better and all they did was devastate you even more and tell you about their own stuff? Anybody ever been devastated? Come on. Have you ever been waiting on God to fix it, to shift it, to correct it, to help it, to change it? Yet it seems like God ain't paying attention to none of those prayers you have prayed. Have you ever felt spiritually devastated? Have you ever felt that God was silent when your problem, your burden, your situation, your issues are screaming at the top of their lungs? Devastated. Have you ever worked and prayed and planted and fasted and sang and preached and cried and worried and anointed and worked again and prayed again and planted again and fasted again and sang again and preached again and worked again and prayed again and planted again and fasted again, yet nothing will get you out of that devastation? Have you ever been ready, willing, waiting, poised, and in position for the harvest to come? But when you went to get it, to catch it, to receive it, there was nothing there. A few years ago, I was at church all by myself. You got a key to a church, you know how it is. Sometimes you just got to go in there and get all by yourself. And I got on the piano and played and sang for myself. I got up in the pulpit and preached for myself. I shouted for myself. I ran around for myself. I got down on the altar all by myself. I thought if anybody walked in, they gonna think I done lost my mind and I didn't care, because I was in that moment. And I felt the Spirit of God tell me that everything I've been worried about was about to be taken care of. I just knew that 2012 was my year. You ever had that moment where you just know that you know that you know, and I knew that 2012 was my year. I knew it was my season. I knew the overflow was coming. I knew that it was all going to work out. I knew that the abundance was on the way. I knew that the debt that I carried before was about to be settled. I knew. I decreed and I declared, and tears fell, and I shouted and I rolled around, and I knew this was my year. I knew my harvest was coming. Preach myself happy all by myself. I knew it. I said, God, you're going to fix it this year. You're going to work it out this year. I went to watch night service excited to say goodbye to the last year because I knew. I didn't think I knew it. God could have dropped a parchment on my head with his signature. I knew it. I was ready for it. I knew my mind would change. I knew my territory would be enlarged. I knew my church would grow. I knew my waistline would shrink. I knew that my heart would heal. My finances would recover. And I was ready for that day.
Well.
I was ready. Went to church and preached real hard that Sunday. Folks showed up. White folk caught the Holy Ghost, didn't know what was going on with them. I was so happy. My harvest was coming. My change was on the way. But as 2012, I inched through it. I was like, all right, God, I know we got 365 days. So I ain't even worried that it seems like it ain't working out right now. I'm not even worried about it. And as I went through in January, February, March, April, May, I was like, all right, God is getting me ready. It's always the calm is before the storm. So in other words, it works the other way. The storm is right now, but the calm is coming. This is the weeping moment. But the joy is in the morning. And I was waiting. And I preached everything to myself every day. Got excited every day. Then one day the doctor said cancer. I said, you know what? It don't even matter because this is my year. Then with cancer came bills, and God said, it don't even matter because this is my year. It's all going to work out. Then came December. And I said, wait a minute, God. I rolled around on the floor. But I preached, God. But I thank God. But you said, you told me, God. I'm not making this up. You said that this year was going to be different. That this year some problems would be solved. But what I realized is that sometimes the harvest we are expecting is not the harvest we need to get in that season. What does that mean, preacher? In other words, sometimes what you think God owes you is not best for you at this time. See, sometimes you're waiting on the harvest to grow, but the harvest is waiting on you to grow before you can accept it and be ready for it. And so I got so upset with God and myself because I felt that all that praying and crying and wait a minute, God, this ain't what I thought it was supposed to be. But then I looked at the text. Though the fig tree does not blossom, no fruit on the vine, the fields have no food, the flock is off from the fold, there are no herd, yet I will rejoice. Yet I will rejoice. It's so easy to rejoice when the harvest is going our way. It's so easy to rejoice when you getting what you want, how you want it, when you want it, why you want it, the way you wanted it, even more than you ever wanted. It's easy when your boat is sinking because there are so many fish that you can't hold them all. But God says, how do you praise me when you ain't got nothing? How do you worship when you sitting in the middle of devastation and you got more worries and problems than you got food or money? How do you bless in the middle of what seems like an empty crop? Sometimes the harvest that we desire is not the harvest that we need. Sometimes when we think we ought to get it, is the very time God says, that's how I know you ain't ready for it. Because if you was ready for it, you wouldn't be looking for it. If you was ready for it, you would be content in all things, like Paul said. If you was ready for it, you would say, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. But blessed be the name of the Lord. Sometimes it's an unexpected harvest. What does that mean? You have to look at what you did get and not what you didn't get. And so I thought that 2012 would be an abundance of financial blessings, but instead it was my harvest for patience, and through it all, fortitude. I thought that God would grow the church, but it was actually God growing me. You have to understand that every harvest is not what you think it ought to be. And you will miss out on counting blessings because you were too busy looking for other folks' stuff. One thing, and I'm going to sit on down. I know a lot of preachers, right? Y'all know, anybody know some preachers? So I've been preaching. I accepted my call to preach one day after my 19th birthday, right? As a sophomore in college. And God had been tugging on me to preach. I didn't want to. I wanted to be in college. What kind of game is that? Hey, baby, I'm a preacher. It worked at 30, it don't work at 19, right? And so I ran and I said, okay, started preaching. In the Emmy Church, the church is not called, you are sent by a bishop. And my bishop, Bishop Vashti Murphy McKenzie from Baltimore, she sent me to a church in the country. I'm from Kentucky. I don't mean country, I mean country. With a K and some U's in there. 216 miles from my front door. You get on the interstate and then you get on a rural road. 160 of those miles. Ain't no lights. Ain't no cell phone service. And literally, you ever heard the saying, God willing and the creek don't rise? If the creek rose, you wouldn't get to that church. This is when we use MapQuest. Now everybody got GPS, but I'm 30, about to be 33. We had MapQuest. I was 20, my first church. You print it off, and literally, when we got to the street where the church was on, MapQuest just stopped. And so I had 3 carloads with me. One of us said, well, we're going to go right. You go left. Call us when you find the church. We found the church. In the middle of the church, or the church in the middle of a field. On the left was corn. On the right was a cemetery. And so I go, after 4 hours in the car, to see my members. There was one old lady, there was one old man, and there was another old man who politely told me he wasn't a member. He said, I just come to help him out. And I said, well, where is everybody? And they pointed out to the cemetery. And I said, Bishop, Bishop, I got a car that gets me to school and back. You sent me to a church 216 miles away. She said, we'll get another car. I said, well, Bishop, they pay $80 a week. I'm spending $60 on gas, getting there, getting back. She said, well, just pray over it. And do you know I went, and I had flyers made, and I said, let's pass them out and invite people to the church. She said, ain't but 20 people in the whole city. They already got a church or they ain't going to church. I said, well, let's try it. We passed out stuff and we tried. And every week I went down and I preached as hard as I could and played the piano and did everything. And I said, God, you know, we got to grow, we got to grow, we got to grow. If we don't grow, this church will die. One Sunday, I was preaching. I kid you not, there was only 2 people in the church. One went to get me some water. This is the country. You can't drink the water out of the tap. She got to bring the water with her. She got to dig the ice out of the ice box. It's a whole production. Brother Tyler, Lord rest his soul, got up and his little oxygen squeaked on out to the bathroom. It was just me in the sanctuary. And I'm preaching. So I'm like, God, what do I do? Do I wait for them to come back? Or do I pray? What do I do? And I kid you not, Sister Dora, I just kept preaching. And after service, she said, I know we wasn't in there, but you sure did sound good. And so after that year, I went to our annual conference to give my report, right? The report is how many baptisms, how many conversions, how many this, how many that. I'm looking at a line of zeros. How much money did you take in? What was the pastor's salary? My tithe was more than my salary. Hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. And I said, Bishop, I didn't grow the church. I messed up. I failed. She said, baby, I didn't send you there to grow the church. I sent you there for the church to grow you. I sent you there so that you can realize no matter how young, how pretty, how smart you think you are, I need you to be humble. I need you to know what it's like to figure out a way to get somewhere that you ain't got a way to get to. I need you to figure out what it's like to preach when they get up and go to the restroom and to get you some water. And I've said all of that to say that many of us are looking at the cathedral harvest, but we haven't conquered the little country church at the end of the road. You see, life is like a video game. You got to get past level 1 before you can get to level 20. Because the problem is, folks think they can start out at level 20, but you ain't got 1 and 2 and 3. You can't do calculus if you don't know what 4 plus 4 is. And so many of us are sitting back saying, God, give me. God, I want. And God says, understand that if that's what you want, then you got to work to get there. And I'm not talking about work once you got there. I'm talking about working until you get there. I have preachers in my church that say, Pastor, I want to preach. Pastor, I want to preach. Pastor, I want to preach. And I always say, well, what ministry are you doing? What have you started? Where's your Bible study? What are you doing? Oh, well, God has given me a word. I said, well, you know what? God has given me a word to give to you. If you want to preach, I want to see your ministry in between Sundays. Because if you think all it is about being a pastor is getting up and folk clapping for you, is getting up and getting a check, then you missed the boat. I want to see what you are willing to do when nobody show up, when no money is available, when it looks like there is no harvest. People tell me, oh, well, I done this and I done helped this pastor, and people owe me. They need to invite me to preach. Don't nobody owe you nothing. Don't nobody owe you nothing. You know how many sermons I had that it was just me and one other person in the church, and I brought it with me. If he wasn't paying no attention, I'll preach for myself, because even though there are no figs on the tree, yet will I taste. We have to stop thinking we got to be T.D. Jakes in order to be anointed. We got to stop counting to get our validation. We have to understand that sometimes the harvest is not what you think it is. Sometimes the harvest is the stuff you didn't want to do in order to be where you are right now today. You got to show up for yourself. You got to work for yourself. You got to realize if it ain't nothing but you and God, that's a good time. Sometimes the harvest you need is the very last thing you want. So I challenge each and every one of you, when you have prayed and cried, when it has blown up in your face, I can't tell you how many times I done spent money out of my own pocket to grow a church, to grow a program, and I just knew this was the one. And when people don't show up, it's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to quit. But if you get it easy, you will quit it easy. And so sometimes God wants to see, how much are you willing to work? How much are you willing to invest of your own time? Some of us ain't got what we want because we quit. That's why the Bible tells us that if we do not faint, we will reap a harvest in due season. Not when you say it's due, but when God says you're ready for it. Amen.
Better give God praise for that word on today. Unexpected.